Hey there, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, have you ever had any bad salesperson experiences?
Yes. I think, haven't we all?
Well, I think so.
And they make me cringe because I've been in sales, right?
Right. Yeah.
And there's nothing more cringeworthy than just you can see it coming a mile away.
Yep.
And bad sales.
That's the worst part is when you are a salesperson or have been in sales and recognize bad salesmanship.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick example. I was helping my wife search for a new car. It's been maybe like 8-9 years back or something like that. Her last car before her current one, and we went around to 5 or 6 different places. She knew what she wanted. She had her laundry list of stuff she wanted, and it just felt like everywhere we went, they all just ignored the stuff that she wanted. It was like, no, why don't we get you into this? This is just fine. And finally, we got to a place where the salesman came out, kind of looked at us, chatted with us very briefly, and said, I have a feeling you guys have something very particular that you're trying to accomplish here. I'm going to let you tell me what you want, and I'll see what I can make happen. And he got the sale.
Hey, look at that.
Like, it wasn't even actually like in 100% everything she wanted, but just the fact that he actually bothered to stop and listen and ask the right questions and care about our needs and
Unique
wants.
concepts, yeah.
There you go. So that's kind of our topic today. We're going to talk about consultative selling.
Yes.
We have Elo's Luke Wilwerding back with us. He was on last year. Exactly. We did some deep selling, account penetration stuff last year. This time we're going to get into this idea of how to be a good consultant when you are selling to your customers. How to, what does that actually mean? Why is this approach even more important now than it ever has been before?
Yep.
We're going to walk through what one of those sales kind of looks like, some of the hurdles maybe that people might face in sales that maybe if they're not as confident as they should be about what to do and when. And then as always, we'll get into our usual value to the VAR and what's TEConnecting with us. It's going to be a good conversation today.
Absolutely.
It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, Luke Wilwerding is back with us. He is Elo's VP of U.S. National Sales. Luke, thanks so much for coming back and joining us again. I know this was a topic of conversation I think that you were kind of excited to get into. So tell us a little bit about your background in sales and why you have come to embrace this kind of approach.
Well, I've been with Elo now for going on 17 years and held jobs as regional sales manager. I worked in the business development side. I traveled throughout North America and sometimes globally, working as an expert in retail hospitality, trying to help, move the ball forward, build connections with our customers, and make sure we were truly providing value. But over this time, I'd like to say I've kind of figured out what best practices work and how to coach the team on a way of selling and an approach that I think is beneficial to our customers. And what's good for them is good for us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, then let's start off then by simply asking, what does consultative selling mean to you? Because that term gets thrown around a lot. Might mean different things.
We throw it around all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But what does it mean to you?
I'd like to call it an investigative way of selling. And there's certain methods we could talk through, but selling through curiosity. How do you really go through and add value to your customer? Selling through empathy, understanding their problems, really working with them at a higher level. And a great example of this is if you've ever gone through a transactional sales process. You walk in, or you talked about, if they're buying a car or other, and so what are you looking for? What's the part number? What's my price? It's very transactional. When you start looking at consultative selling, it's more about the customer might not actually know of a problem. You're bringing the industry information and knowledge to them to try to help them identify what issues they are facing. Or when they have a problem, you're really going through and actively, consciously asking the right questions. You're listening through this curiosity approach and trying to take a deeper perspective on what is their issue and what value can you bring to that issue. It's less about, hey, I'm all about hitting my quota. It's more about, hey, I'm all about helping my customer. And this approach, again, takes some technique. It takes some thought, let's say. And you've got to have the right people to manage through this. And we'll get into, I hope today, in terms of why this is becoming so important. But the term trusted advisor, getting a seat at the table, trying to ascertain, again, exactly what that customer needs or wants. And when you look at consultative selling questions, like the situation, what are they going through? What problem are they trying to solve? What's an implication of a direction or strategy that they might go through, or what is potentially need payoff? And I can speak to certain applications within ELO and how a customer might be looking for point of sale, but have they really thought of self-checkout? Or they're looking at a way to do both at the same touch point. Does mobile play into this? But it's all of those questions that we should be asking, as well as an active listening. You got to stop and let them talk to you and understand, again, where they're going with stuff.
So many things to unpack already coming out of the gate out of there. But I agree with you, Luke. I mean, I'll throw on the table as well, building relationship, right? I mean, when you talk about consultative selling, you really can't be in the game unless you have some type of relationship, right? Right. And that gets to what Luke was talking about, the whole trust factor. That comes to bear here, right? And people aren't going to trust. Well, they're not going to really buy from somebody that they don't trust. So in order to get the trust, you need to build the relationship.
Exactly.
And at the end of the road, what this channel does is really not transactional. We are solutions integrators, right? We are technology solution integrators. We are in the fold of what is happening that is very cutting edge, bleeding edge, whatever you want to call it. And so just by the nature of what we do, you kind of almost have to, at least I would think, have kind of that consultative approach and going after it and asking the questions, right? You touched on it already with the ability to ask questions, and I will say the ability to listen. As we've already talked about, as you already did in your intro there, that was a great build up to it. So those are pretty important things, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how can you have value if you don't have the trust and if you don't have the relationship that you can build with on?
Yep. And I think you hit on it there when you mentioned the idea that our channel is very much about solution selling. And a lot of that, again, comes down to relationships because, sure, you can be transactional. If someone says, hey, I need a mobile computer, a barcode scanner, a display, here's the specs I need. Fine. You could very easily give them, hey, here's a SKU that meets all that specs.
Yeah, right.
Buy it or not. I don't care. See you later.
Yeah.
But, if you want to become, as Luke put it, that trusted advisor, if you want to become that person that they keep coming back to or come to you when they have an actual problem that they want to discuss potential solutions, bring you into the buying process sooner than later, you have to have that relationship built. You have to have that trust, and that comes from you seemingly caring or interested in their problems and their issues.
Yeah.
And that brings me to a few interesting stats here before we get into kind of like this approach and why it's important. So I found this from an actual HubSpot post. They're from their own blog. 84% of business buyers are more likely to buy from sales reps who understand their goals. That's a huge number. And again, it feels like it makes sense, but you'd be surprised how many salespeople don't really think that hard about that.
Oh, they don't.
I don't care what you're doing. Just what do you want? I've got what you want. Either I have what you want or I don't have what you want. Just tell me that and we'll move on.
Yeah.
And then 57% of those buyers believe reps lack adequate knowledge of their business. So a significant majority want that understanding of their goals, but more than half are also saying most reps that we talk to don't have an understanding or an acknowledgement of our business.
So
And then back to kind of when we had those 3 episodes we did with James Cordial about the challenge customer and understanding how to get involved with buying groups in particular, which we come up a lot in our particular channel. Well, one of the big stats we called out several times during that, I'm going to call it out again. Most buying groups are 57% of the way through the process before reaching out to suppliers.
That's right.
So if you're again only treating that as a transactional thing where you don't get involved or really talk to them, have anything to do with them until they need or want something from you, they're already typically halfway through the process of trying to figure out what they're going to do before they reach out, which may have blocked you out of any chance of presenting a solution or building a rapport, or as Luke mentioned, like maybe they came to you for one thing and you come back and say, well, have you thought about this instead? You came to me about POS, but have you thought about self-checkout instead? If you're waiting too long, those buying groups by the time they get to you have already decided we're just doing this. We already had that conversation about self-checkout. We decided we're not going to do it. Just get on board with this. And you get blocked out at that point.
At that point, you're just Mr. Transaction.
Exactly. So Luke, I guess let's kind of get into the next part here with then is first of all explaining why is this customer-centric approach, this needs-based kind of approach, building these relationships, investigative, asking questions. Why is that more important now than it ever has been before?
Well, there's a couple factors to this. And one of the primary ones is the amount of available information far exceeds the capacity of our customers to consume it. So think about how much information is out there on any given topic. It's overwhelming. And so when we look at the art of being the consultant, let's say in consultative selling, it's taking this vast amount of data and all the offerings that a VAR might have to offer and boil it down to, I listen to my customer, I understand their needs, and now I can consult based on all of this data that's available to them. And I love the stats part of this, but Gartner reported 89% of buyers reported having access to high quality information. It's not about not having data and available data. It's being able to boil that data down to useful information specific to the problem that your customers are trying to solve. Here's another issue. Buyers are spending more and more time analyzing this information like we discussed and not meeting with salespeople. They're remote. We've got hybrid workforce. So as we look at the amount of time that the VAR, the OEM, or other can spend face-to-face with that customer or sitting in meetings working through, there used to be weekly on-sites. There was the Friday lunch. There was time that was spent together. This dynamic is changing. Information has exploded, and the amount of time we're getting with our customers in some cases has been reduced. And so being the consultant to work through problems and listening, et cetera, is, again, why I think it's more important than ever.
I would agree with that. I mean, how do you get to the problem? Well, you have to ask questions along the way. So, in consultative selling, that to me, that's a part of what you have to do.
Right.
You really got to get in there. You got to have a conversation around it, and you have to listen. I love the fact that we're hammering in on the listen part because, to your point, Luke, I would, if I'm walking into an initial kind of, process, if you will, I'm assuming that individual's already down the road with some preconceived biases. Yep. They've already learned some stuff along the way. And you need to probe for that. You need to understand where are they? Where are they in this realm of their understanding of the particular solution? And I mean, how else are you going to consult unless you don't know where they're at?
Right,
because you could be walking on landmines walking in. You could walk in, and if you think you own the world and start down talking some technology or something like that some person is already investigating, really kind of thinks is a good idea.
Right.
Well, then you're out, right?
Yep.
So really, to me, the consultation starts with listening, asking good probing questions. I will throw out the power of silence as well. After you ask the questions, I mean, it's okay to have some silence in the room so that people can think about it, because you want to have kind of that conversation around it. Because, obviously, if you have a good base of knowledge walking in, we're kind of already assuming that you know your product and you know where it works in the universe and those kinds of things. But if you have more knowledge that you're bringing, you need, to kind of understand and have some silence along the way to see where people are thinking and how they're marinating on some of the information that's happening in the room.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also, customers in general, we as customers, whether it's as part of a B2B buying process and we're part of a group or we're part of, a sale for our company, or us as general consumers, which probably informs our attitudes towards our business type relationships as well. We've come to learn and understand how salesmanship works.
Yes, right.
It's not like, when you go watch Glengarry Glen Ross or The Wolf of Wall Street, where they're selling those stocks back in the 80s, where it's just all this hyper aggressive, field, you need to do this, you're got to do this now. I'm gonna put you in this, where you're just battering somebody until they just relent and hand you their money. Yeah. That doesn't work anymore.
No.
There's very few people that works on it because we are so tech savvy, because we are so information heavy.
Yes.
We have so many ability to go out and do research and compare and contrast. I mean, just going and buying something on Amazon.
Sure.
There's a section on any Amazon page where you can compare 6 or 7 different products that are similar and compare and contrast them. That kind of stuff, it makes it impossible for the aggressive salesperson that thinks I'm just going to hammer you with everything that I've got and all the cool gadgets and functions or whatever that it has, and
Yep.
and then you will have no choice but to buy it because I've spent so much time telling you about it. We're too savvy for that. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So
I'm just going to keep working you over.
yeah,
that
exactly.
doesn't
I mean, I'm
really
sure
work.
there's a few people still out there, they say there's a dummy born every minute or something like that, kind of
Right.
thing. But I
Yeah.
feel like in general, unless you are getting them when they're newborns, most people have become savvy enough now to recognize when they're being sold to, that they don't want it to happen to them. So.
Especially in the B2B world, right?
Yeah,
I mean, these people
exactly.
are making decisions that are meaningful. And as we've already explored, there's a group decision going on, right? So there's other stakeholders in the fold. And that technique, the other technique of strong sell won't work here in this one.
Well, let me give you another example here, though. So I'll use ELO as the example. So I've been with ELO for almost 17 years. We used to sell touch monitors. We still do. But when you look at what we're truly selling today, we're not just selling a monitor now. We're selling a unified architecture. We're selling an ecosystem. We're selling a SaaS environment in some cases. The complexity of products to stay competitive for most vendors have gone through the roof. We're not just connecting a monitor to a computer. We're connecting a computer to a broader ecosystem, an app development environment, management tools, asset management. We're enabling employees with technology. We're mobile, we're Wi-Fi, we're cellular. You have to be the consultant of your own product as well as the consultant of your customer's ecosystem to be successful in today's world, obviously depending on what you're selling. But when it comes to an ELO person, we'll get into this a little bit more about some of the value that ELO can bring to the VAR. But really, another piece of this is just the complexity of products and the specializations to help our customers be competitive has gone exponentially higher.
Yeah, that's a really good one because I'll go back 10 years or so in my life when I, was more on the reseller side. I was on the reseller side, and we started, dabbling in digital signage and stuff like that. We would have consultative approach to some of our customers as it related to large format displays, the use of that, and then kind of transitioning them into some more interactive technologies. I like where you're going, Luke, in the sense that it's more of a dialogue about, an overall solution in the completeness of what it can bring. You as the solution provider know these things walking in the door, and sometimes you can ask the questions to lead it towards that regard. In this particular use case, it was an entity that would do horse sales, and we owned, we had the account for years, and we would project the what they call the hips and the horses running down the straightaway up on passive displays. But we had started having probing conversations around, well, what about interactivity? Do you think there would be a value to have the buyers be able to walk up to a kiosk and be able to select different horses and watch them interactively and tie that into an ecosystem? By the way, they were ELO monitors that we sold and we got the deal. But I mean, those are the kinds of discussions that this is what consultation is all about, right? It's not just walking in the door and say, oh, you need another screen, and then so we're going to transact on this. You got to ask questions and get some insight.
Definitely. Yeah. And to Luke's point, I like when you talked about your past of the whole touch monitor thing, and now that it's so much bigger, it's a unified architecture. There's so much more involved.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and to your point too, that whole idea of the consultative is not just about them, but also understanding you and your company and what you're trying to accomplish, your goals. Where do our goals and your goals actually meet?
Yeah,
your goals are the important part. But, I've got my own goals to meet also. And if I'm talking to you about your goals, ideally, I might find some intersection there. And again, that whole idea of, sure, you can come to me and say, I want X, and I could give you X and we could be done. But why would you do that when you have the opportunity to say, well, why do you want X? What's going on? What are you working on right now? What's at stake here? Where's X going to fit in? How's that fit in with something else? You just start going down that path of asking a few questions, and suddenly you're opening up this conversation where if this person in any way wants that kind of feedback and input, they're going to start opening up and answering.
I feel like, because having gone through the sales process before, I think some sales reps don't go down this road because they fear asking the questions. As I was listening to you talk, I'm thinking to myself, the way I would approach it, if there was a gap in my solution, they're bringing up, the customer, the prospect's bringing up issues that maybe my solution doesn't cover right now, I would never fear that.
Right.
To me, I saw that as an opportunity to contact my vendor, right, and say, hey, I got this prospect, and here's the gap in my solution. Do you guys have any issues?
Is that something we could do something about?
Elo's got this phenomenal ecosystem, that they can tap into software development or whatever needs to happen there. So you see what I'm saying? Though? I think a lot of reps kind of fear asking questions because they don't want to get down that route. And I'm saying it should be the exact opposite. Welcome that and see that as an opportunity.
Exactly. And we'll get to more of those fears in a moment. But Luke, I want you to kind of start things off here by kind of walk us through the consultative sale. Like, what does that set look like? What is a salesperson doing kind of from start to finish, if they're truly following this model?
I'm going to take one out of your guys' page here. I'm going to go off of a little bit of the HubSpot dialogue in terms of how they laid out steps, because I like the thought, and I'll put some mix in this. But you got to start with targeting and qualifying. So you've got to be aware of what your customer problem is, or present a problem they might not be aware of. And so once those problems are identified through either industry knowledge, employment costs are going up. Are you looking at self-service? Are you looking at self-checkout? Are you enabling your employees with mobile so they can do more with their time that they are spending on the clock? But it's going through and targeting and qualifying with your customer, bringing some value in terms of what problem they might already have, or discussing problems they'll likely face. Once you've gone through that target and qualify, you start to then explore and assess. Work through how much of a priority the issue is, determine options, develop decision criteria, let's say. But at this point, you're formulating your plan and how you can address that potential problem. You want to be the consultant at this point. You want to send relevant data and information. So again, explore and assess. After you've gone through that, you're really developing that solution. You're bringing hard facts. You're bringing what they could buy. You're narrowing down your choices, refining that decision criteria through this developing the solution side. And this really gets into what we might determine as the quoting piece, the services side. It's what does this overall solution look like?
If I could,
and then from there.
Yeah, if I could pause you right there, Luke, because I really think it's important at this stage to make sure that the stakeholders understand what you're proposing, right? Especially when we get into some of these technologies that maybe we're introducing some new stuff along the way. Rather than just saying, here's our plan now that you've spent, a good amount of time. Just I would say make sure that they understand the value behind some of the things that you're integrating into your quote and or your presentation, so that they can talk the talk and walk the walk when they have to go back behind the scenes and sell it for you. Sorry, Luke. Yeah, go ahead.
You have to, and I like that you paused me there for a second, because at this phase, you have to differentiate. You've got to focus on business outcomes and prove that value that you're bringing. Because if you can't do that at that phase, you're just kind of another option there. The consultative side is kind of left the building, let's say. You've got to make sure that you can differentiate and really prove yourself, gain that trust, and I call it a seat at the table, but be that trusted advisor. And then that last piece, second to last piece, is you present that solution. At this point, you should already be working with procurement. They got an idea of costing. You know what you need to do. You've likely already asked for the business a couple times. We'll get into that a little bit more here. And then the last step is just negotiate and close. And I'll make one point, though, is when you're confident that the deal's moving your way. They love Elo's Android Edge Connect capability, its flexibility. Man, this deal's done. I presented it. We're good to go. And I start focusing on something else. Don't drop the ball. Make sure you stay connected with your customer all the way through, and even after the purchase order. Because as you look at that finish and close piece of this, you don't want to lose a deal so close to the finish because you took attention off of it for another deal, let's say. But you also want to keep providing that value through the process, so you look at the next deal and the next potential business outcome that you can start to address.
I like that. Towards the end of the stage, it's okay in my mind to be a little alpha, to kind of take control of the process a little bit. But
have a little confidence. You got to have some confidence.
Yeah, you want to do it in a way that's not overbearing. You know, you don't want to be that person. Hey. I sent you this information. Do you get
Are you going to sign on the dotted line?
You don't want to be that
business?
guy or gal. But you do. But it's okay. To kind of take control. control, because at this point, you are the consultant. You have come up with what you feel is the plan,
right,
the right solution at this particular point in where we are in the process. So again, don't be too afraid, because I've worked with reps before that are maybe really good on the front side. Everything that Luke laid out here, the research, the getting the presentation, the molding it, getting the story right, and getting it to a SAL or whatever, or an RFP response. And then it's like, they just don't have the confidence to say, okay, asking for the deal, right? Just some basic stuff there, but it's okay to be a little alpha here at the end. You know what I mean?
I agree. So, this was something I really want to talk about, because I've been through a couple different sales organizations where they've both had similar type consultative models. And I literally, like, my first job in sales at a publisher, we followed this Richardson sales model, which was this whole consultative selling thing. It was the first time I ever heard about this. But I think the important thing, too, to think about when you're talking about this process and what it means is that there needs to be a culture built around this within your organization as well.
That's really good.
It's not just as simple as, if you listening to this podcast right now decide, I'm going to be a consultative salesperson. If you decide to do that and your organization's more focused on just hammering out deals as fast as possible, transactions as many as possible, get in there, get it done, get the PO, move on, that's going to be a conflict. It's going to be a huge conflict.
A little disconnect going on
there. And that can be sometimes problematic where, if you can't convince your organization as a whole is not on board with this idea of, like, look, we're not going to spend our time just being transactional and just making as many deals as possible. It's understanding that this consultative model takes time, it takes research, it takes effort. It could stretch a sales cycle over months or even years potentially. But ideally, at the end of it, when you've done it and you've done it right, you get bigger, better deals. You get long-lasting relationships that lead to bigger and better deals along the way too. You can still have, like, there could be a part of your team that's focused on the transactional side.
Yeah.
You can have the equivalent of, like, basically customer service that's there. Just someone calling in needs to buy something.
Business runs on that, right? It's like this kind of day-to-day, we call it run rate.
But ideally, there's something tied to that in some way where there's a potential for, asking some probing questions and getting a sales rep involved and reaching back out. It could be even just reaching out to someone that had a very transactional interaction with you and saying, hey, just checking in. How did that go for you? By the way, what were you using that for? Why did you buy that display? What were you going to use it for? Oh, well, I was, I wanted to put up something new in my in my racetrack. We just had our episode with Jim Foster about sports betting. I just wanted to put up some more screens. Like, really? Well, I noticed you didn't buy something that was interactive. Have you thought about interactive gaming? That conversation should be beginning from there. There's plenty of opportunities to do that. But again, you've got to build a little bit of a culture in your organization around it in order to make this actually
I like
work.
the cultural aspect, but also, as we've talked about, some organizations are actually structurally changing, right?
Yes.
Because you just mentioned it. Maybe sometimes, instead of having all salespeople all doing the same thing, an alternative structure would be to have more customer support, customer service people that are doing the transactional stuff. And that way you can enable outside or true business development people to maybe have these kinds of conversations where you're probing. Coming out of the pandemic, I think you're seeing, we've seen some statistics around that, how companies are literally changing the structure of themselves a little bit more to accommodate some of those things.
Well, and again, you could have that work, force where they're remote, even potentially across the country, that are doing the transactional stuff, and then you have your own homegrown force of maybe a smaller amount, but like very dedicated consultative reps that are out there in the field that are having regular conversations, regular meetings that are developing that business development and developing out these larger deals that come along the way. Well, then, Luke, let's kind of wrap this up with and you brought it up a moment ago, the idea of the close, closing the business. I think probably the two biggest hurdles when it comes to this model is, one, for sales reps to understand how to overcome objections, and realize when someone in the middle of you think you've got it all, maybe you're in the presentation mode, maybe you're working your way through your contacts and having consultative conversations, and you've got that one or two people who are like, I have a question. What about X? I don't know about the cost, or I don't know if this fits with us. I don't know if we want to do this. And the stuff you weren't expecting, the objections you weren't expecting. And then also, again, at the end, asking for the business, getting that closed. As you mentioned, that can be the hardest thing sometimes for someone to actually get into that sort of alpha mode where you just say, like, all right, I've done all the work. Tell me that, give me the business. So, Luke, what are your tips for both of those? If you're trying to help somebody understand how to overcome objections and ask for the business, what do you suggest?
I'd start with a mindset on objections. So, and this is, I've heard this multiple times, but at a Objection is not a rejection. And so people have to understand quickly that if someone has an objection, they're not rejecting you or buying from you. It's simply a request for more information. And you've got to look at it that way. It's an opportunity to get to, if I get this done for you, can I get the business? So work through these objections quickly and efficiently for your customers, because they're hurdles. They're little speed bumps that get you to the end result, which is getting the business. And so I look at objections and I boil it down to 4. And I say lack of need, lack of urgency, lack of trust, and lack of money. All of those have different selling techniques or things that you should consider. So lack of need, well, did you do your job? Did you explain, work with them on the problem? And have you given them enough justification that this is something, man, you really need self-checkout? Wow, legally, you really need price checkers. Wow, if you enabled your workforce with mobile, how more efficient could you be? This is creating the need. This is your job. The urgency piece. You've got to understand what their problem was and create a sense of urgency. Ooh, Windows 7, you're still running that. Wow, the security risks there alone, or the amount of money you might be spending with Microsoft to keep that thing going. Let's get this done for you. But create some urgency through knowledge and understanding that customer. The trust factor is all on you people. Your customer has to trust you. You have to be forthright with your customer. So building that trust is you call and you say you're going to call, you do what you say you're going to do, you're honest, you're upfront, you got to be good at building trust. I mean, that's just, again, table stakes. The last one's interesting, the lack of money. Last time I checked, VARs and Mila, we don't give away stuff. So you got to have money. It's one of those things that's a need. But there are situations where maybe you didn't, in the front of this, really understand their budget. Maybe you presented something that's more on the highest level of something, and it does cost a lot. Are there different alternatives? Can you scale down the solution? And I like to talk in terms of give-get. If I give you something like a lesser processor, or if there's an alternative in terms of your delivery schedule, but there's ways to work through the money piece. And if you're just talking to maybe the business side, not a CFO or someone who really controls the money, that's another thing. Just make sure you know what's going on with the money, because I can assure you every single one of them says, well, ooh, that's expensive. I don't have that much money. That's not always the case. This is called negotiating. So just work through the money piece. And I'll also touch on the last comment here, and that's asking for the business. I think there's many people in the world that they don't have a problem asking for it. And I think if you've gone through that need, urgency, trust, you've done the right things by this customer, asking for that business. And I've used examples like, how would you rate us today? Are we kind of an ABC? How are we doing with you? Or if you had to make the decision now, is this something that you'd go with us, or is there something that we're missing? But you should always be ascertaining the temperature, the situation with your customer, so that when the time is right and they're ready to pull that trigger, it's going to be with you, because you already know they're going to do that because you've asked them every step of the way. So I look at asking for the business as a part of the overall process. And make sure it's intertwined. This isn't some big culmination of, I've done all these great things, so now today's the day. I've wore my favorite bow tie. I'm going to ask for the business. No, you've been asking for it all along, in my opinion.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I love that. I'm going to go back to the money one, because I think that's really good. And everything you just said there, Luke, is brilliant and dead on, if you ask me. Exposing, giving an idea of the budget, to me, is really important in that consultative kind of approach, because
right.
if you don't know, if you walk in, if you already know that, you have an idea that the solution that you're going to be presenting is a Ferrari,
right.
and you're walking in and you don't expose the budget or what
right.
the perception is there, and you come to find out really kind of too late in the game that they're more in the Honda Accord, right. Kind of a budget, that can really be. Well, it's damaging in the sense that you now have spent all this time, yep. and there really is no, I don't care how good of a salesperson you might be, the budget simply is not there. Right. I mean, there's always pluses and minuses around a budget where you can nudge your way and get a little bit more and, right. and truly present a better value. But it'll also tell you just how much of an uphill climb you have to go.
Right.
If there's a really big gap in what you think the solution is going to go for and what their expectation is, well, okay, you got some work cut out, and now you really got to do some due diligence around the consultation part of it,
Right.
and saying, hey, here's the value of what I'm bringing to the table, right? The money is a good one there. I love all four of them: the need, urgency, trust, and money.
Yeah.
But that's a good one.
Yeah, very good stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this comes down to just simply, again, having that kind of confidence, and also, again, if you've done your diligence, as we've talked about. Remember, we had our episode a couple years back about effective sales presentations.
Yes, right.
I talked to you
Yeah.
all about that sales presentation model that I learned about at my last gig before BlueStar, and it was all built around this idea of, again, if you've gone through all of this consultative selling, if you have you've asked the right questions, you've uncovered the right needs, that by the time you get in front of somebody to give them a presentation, as long as, again, you are saying, hey, here's what I know about you, here's what we do as it relates to what I know about you, not just us everything, not all the cool stuff we can do that has nothing to do with you or your business. Here's what we do based on what you have told me or your needs are and what I understand about you. And I've checked to make sure that's the case. Here's what I'm presenting, here's what I'm showing you. At that point, there's no reason why asking for the business should be hard. If you've done all of that and all along the way, they're nodding along and saying, yes, you understand me. Yes, I understand you and how it relates to my particular issues. Yes, I do agree there's a fit here between us. Then at that point, saying, okay, let's move forward. What's next? It doesn't necessarily have to be like, I need to cut me a PO today, or let's get started. It could be like, all right, well, let's schedule our next meeting to talk about how we're going to start the process of making this happen. Some sort of commitment that says that yes, they are on board and they're moving forward with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too hard to do. Again, if you've done all the other stuff, I know it can be scary, for salespeople to do. But, once you do it a couple times and realize how easy it is to actually ask that, even if it's not a direct, like,
No, I'm with you.
hand me the check, if it's more of a, let's move on to next steps.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. That's the same concept. You've essentially asked for continuing the business and continuing the conversation. And that's all you really need to do to move things along.
Yeah, it's like talking to a family member about some family decision. I mean, there needs to be a comfort level there, right?
Yeah.
Where there is no surprise at the end of the road. You've asked the questions. I love the question you were asking there, Luke, about how are we doing?
That's a great one.
We're in the process. What are we, A, B, C? Are we fitting? Is this going the way you would? That'll be very revealing.
Yep. Would you agree that this conversation, would you agree that what I showed you today is going to meet the needs that we've discussed? And if they go, or if they say no, like, no, there's something missing. What about this? Fine. That's perfect too. Again, that's continuing that consultative narrative where you're like, all right, well then let's stop. Let's stop what we're doing right now before I go any further.
There's a disconnect here. Hold on.
Let's explore where we're not meeting in the middle right now and talk about that.
Or maybe you're going to realize that you're the bunny that's just on the racetrack, that you're just the lap bunny, and you're not in the mix at all, and that can unveil that stuff as well.
Right.
That part of the process. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
I'll just put a bow on this, though. This is all about the customer. It's his customer selling. This is really about their best interests. This isn't. We have to become more empathetic. We have to be better at serving in general. I mean, again, we like to say technique, we like to say method. The method is help your customer, help them be successful, and the business will come. And I got to end with that to a point on it. It is truly a approach here of serving your customer.
Yep. Hard agree.
Agreed.
All right. Well, hey, before we move on to our recurring segments and let Luke talk a little bit about how ELO fits into all of this, I want to, as always, thank our TEConnect members. We appreciate your support and sponsorship of the show. In particular, ELO, obviously, for lending us Luke for this episode. We really appreciate that. Hey, as always, if you like the show, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button for this particular episode. Subscribe to our channel. We got all kinds of cool stuff. We've got our Bon Appetit cooking show is back. Unboxed videos, some cool videos like, the unboxing stuff you always see with toys and whatnot. We're doing that now too, where you get to unbox cool stuff. There's always good stuff to find there, so please subscribe. If you are listening on an audio-only format, if you have a way to leave us a rating and review, please do that. We'd love to hear from you, love to get your ratings. 5-star only if you can. Like we need
Nothing but the best.
We need the best ratings.
That's right.
If you don't have a great rating for us, reach out to us first and tell us why. Maybe we can improve the show for you.
Let us have a consultative process.
Exactly. And to that note, also, if you have ideas for the show, if you want to tell us what you want to hear about, check the show notes. There's a link where you can submit ideas to the podcast. If you submit one to us that we like, we'll send you a free T-shirt and shout you out on the show later if we need to. And hey, as always, too, if you want to connect with us, find out what we're talking about, talk back to us, you can find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us anytime, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up with our recurring segments, starting first of all, as always, with the value to the VAR.
Yes.
This is where we kind of try to take our conversation, wrap it up in a bow, give it a little bit of a send-off to our VAR audience and something they can do. And in particular, I wanted them to kind of know how ELO fits into this picture. So, Luke, tell us a little bit how ELO does fit into the consultative sales cycle. What do you do to help VARs and their reps do this kind of selling?
I go back to this comment that ELO is no longer just selling touch displays. Certainly we make the world's best, but our products are now more complex than ever. They're SaaS-enabled platforms, unified architecture. We're migrating customers from what they've done for the last 20, in some cases 30 years, to new evolving technology. And I'm painting a picture, let's say, of complexity. We're affecting retail, hospitality, medical, industrial, across the board. ELO is working with the VARs to be the ultimate consultants of our products, to help them be successful with their customers. So when we look at the consultative selling process, certainly this is ELO's core approach into how we provide support out into the industry. We don't expect the VARs to fully understand what's packed into our SDK, how our SaaS can be a game changer for many of the customers, and as they evolve into the next generation platforms. This is where we have the resources, the solutions architects, the sales engineers, the product folks. We are truly here to help serve our VARs so they can serve their customers.
Love it. And I'll add on to that ELO is really a good partner here. We were talking about, when you're doing that probing on the solution, maybe you have some gaps in your solution. What I love about ELO is they're the kind of company that you can go to them with some of those problems and some challenges, and they will help you out. For example, if you don't know who Tyler Botts is, their ISV manager, and can tap you into the software element of it, well, you need to know who he is because he can really help you out. I mean, I love the ecosystem. It is truly a little bit more broad than just a large format display or just a touch monitor, right? We're all kind of going in that direction, and ELO's on the front there. Love it.
I agree. And obviously, this channel, is different from a lot of other sales cycles and organizations and situations you might be in where, some companies, they're selling the same products that they build, that they make, that they market. Like it's all part of one company. So it's easy to go out and talk about everything there is to know about your product when it is your product. But when you're in this channel and you have a lot of different solutions from a bunch of different vendors, different places, different industries potentially you're selling into, that's when you have to rely more than ever on the help that you can get from the people who are the actual experts. So don't ever hesitate when you're having that process and you're going through that consultative cycle, either one, reaching out and finding out what kind of questions should I be asking, or the next step being like, okay, I've asked these questions. Here's some of the answers I got. What does that mean? What should I be positioning next? Even maybe bringing in some folks, pulling someone in from ELO, and saying, hey, can you come with me on this this particular call, and can you join this call so that when they ask me some of these questions that I don't quite know about, again, the in-depth technology behind what I'm offering here, you can answer those questions. It all goes back to something we were always saying on this podcast, which is you are not an island. You don't have to go it alone. You have potential partnerships. This channel exists for a reason.
That's it.
And these relationships exist for a reason.
Bingo.
Tap into them, and if you have to, start with us. Our team will help you out as much as they can, and when we need to, we'll grab someone from ELO or whoever and bring them into the conversation.
Somebody like a Luke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I got to brag a little bit, folks. So you mentioned Tyler. We've got folks like Nick Scenarios, Kristen Roubaix. There's a team of people at ELO that truly I am so proud of. The folks, their dedication, their knowledge, their experience, their background. This is a group of people that I continue to be wowed by daily. But as an organization and as a channel-focused organization, we are set up to service the VARs. We have our channel teams. We have coverage at the top level VARs, our mid-tier VARs. We have teams that work with the VARs to work with the end customers. So again, when you look at how we're set up and organized, the ISV team, of course, from Tyler, but this is a whole consultative approach at every single level to provide this assistance and consultation to, again, the VAR, the end customer, the overall problem that's being trying to solve, the material that you might leverage to prove that problem, or the solution that you might need. So again, it's just, I sometimes think that we're not being leveraged enough, and we are truly here to help.
Bingo. Well said.
Yep, definitely. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, let's, as always, wrap up with our favorite segment of each week. What's Tech Connecting with you? This is where we get to talk about something from the world of science, tech, innovation, business, something that's got our eye, has our attention, something could be exciting us, something that could be concerning us about the future of humanity, the fate of the world. So, Luke, tell us, what's Tech Connecting with you right now?
Guys, when you put it in that way, I'm thinking, wow, this could be, and I know it can be just about anything, but I'm going to keep it kind of simple. I'm going edge computing, folks.
Yes, love it.
That's one of Dean's favorites,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Edge computing, maybe you've talked about this quite a bit, but I continue to geek out on where edge computing is going to take us, our industry, and truly the world of interaction, customer experience, digital enablement. But moving the compute and the knowledge through AI and other sources to the edge, where the computers themselves can make some of the decision in almost near real time. We're talking wearables, we're talking mobile, connected fitting rooms, different ways for payment. I mean, again, the edge computing side and the architectures that are being implemented today for the success of tomorrow is amazing.
I could not agree with you more. And yes, that's exactly how we talk about edge around here, is that, and I love the fact that you bring it up, because I think Elo is one of those critical players on the edge, right? You need the compute power to enable this AI, and on all these things that are happening on the edge, you got to have the compute power there. And I love the way that Elo is approaching that, because they have it. They have it built in. So a nice little way to weave in your company there too on one of the things that's tech connecting with you. That's awesome. Yeah, edge compute is pretty cool. All right, I'm going to go a different route here. Virgin Galactic opens space ticket sales to public. Were you aware of this?
I knew it was coming.
I mean, we've been talking about space travel and stuff like that, but I'm
sure it's going to be quite affordable for me, right?
Oh, I got all the details for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
So they're looking for 1,000 paying customers to come in. Okay. And what do you think the ticket goes for? It started back in February 16th, by the way, that they made it available to the public. Luke, what would you pay to go out into space? You know, what is a ticket worth?
I heard a number. It was like 400,000 or 500,000, something like that.
Dang, you're on it. It's $450,000. So if you've got that to spare, you can go up in the air with Virgin Galactic.
I was complaining about the $4,000 or $5,000 it costs to go to that Star Wars hotel at Disney World, and they say they're taking me to space too.
This is a little bit more. Now, what are you going to get for that? Well, after the countdown, the average Joe astronaut, I love how they get in there, will enjoy a 90-minute journey.
Joe millionaire astronaut, maybe. Yeah.
Will enjoy a 90-minute journey, including a signature air launch and a Mach 3 boost into space, as well as just a few minutes of weightlessness and views from 17 shuttle windows.
So is this like suborbital kind of thing? Kind of like how Bezos is doing with the Blue Origin, where you're not really in space, you're just kind of...
Okay, maybe. No,
upper atmosphere.
Upper atmosphere, right? This is the one where it's the plane. You know, the plane goes up, and then I think you launch from that plane, and they shoot you out, and so maybe you're skipping off the atmosphere and coming back down, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think you're like orbiting.
Right.
You're not up in that orbit. Yeah, but
I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd still be cool, but
yeah. Well, now, if you haven't made up your mind, really all you have to put down right now is $150,000
that's all.
To advance. So, Luke, you in? Are we selling our house, and are you and I going up in Virgin Galactic, or what?
I'm thinking that half the people, the equity they got in their homes nowadays could probably afford this. So why not?
Wait,
Dude, YOLO, man. You only live once. I'm blowing it on the ticket for Virgin Galactic.
I think I'll wait until it gets a little more mainstream and affordable. When it's boring, when it just
you'll let us early adopters, drive the price down.
I'd say so. Yeah,
right,
this is one of those places where price is a little bit of a barrier. I'm okay with getting on board with a lot of technology, but I'm just like, I don't need to go broke and
I hear you.
Second mortgage and
fair enough.
leveraging my child's future college education. I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
Just for a hop, skip, and a jump through space. Now, if you're telling me like, hey, you get to go colonize Mars and start a whole new thing or something,
maybe
I might be a little more into that.
Germ free.
Well, yeah,
right?
of course,
of course.
Yeah.
What's
All right.
TEConnecting with you, John?
So we've talked a couple times, I think offline, maybe even online too, about how the world of dating apps and we're very grateful that we're married and don't have to think about this stuff. And we've been married long enough that we never really had to tap too much into the modern dating app system
world.
Well, exactly. So, but I will say there's an interesting new innovation that Match.com has come up with for single parents. So they're launching a new dating app specifically for single parents called Stir. And this is one of those things I'm like, all right, whatever, another dating app. But I was reading through it and this actually is a great idea because I know from friends that are recently single, and are parents, whether it's from a divorce or whatever, and it's not easy getting back out there at all.
No.
And especially again in this modern dating app world where it's all about like how good of an impression can you make on
Swipe
somebody
left,
within a
swipe
couple
right,
seconds,
right.
for them to
Exactly.
decide, and single parents having either an extra obstacle where there's a lot of people that just don't want to date somebody that has children already. So Match decided to think about this because they noticed that there was a huge uptick, obviously during the pandemic, of people joining these apps in general. Because I guess how else are you going to communicate?
It's
or meet
the virtual
people?
bar.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know,
And then, but they also noticed though that during that time there was a lot more single parents that were actively getting onto these platforms. And then many of them were expressing they're like, hey, I'm having trouble still, defining people where I'll meet somebody, start having a good conversation. Second they learn I have kids, they ghost me, or they don't understand the time involved. So
what's Stir
this
do?
app. So Stir, like one of the biggest innovation about it is obviously for one, it's just for single parents. But the biggest part of it too is like they have options included in it to like put your schedule in there. Like when am I usually free? So there's like a whole option where like you can make note of like what days of the week you're most often going to be free. What times are you typically going to be free? So you can hopefully align your schedule with someone you're potentially dating. So if someone's looking at you and deciding, hey, is this somebody I want to reach out to or have a connection with or start talking to, and you find out like, hey, I'm only available to really go out for dates on Saturday nights, every other Saturday, or Mondays and Tuesdays or something. This person's only available on Wednesdays and Thursdays. All right, well, that's someone that's not going to be very compatible with. We're going to have a hard time even finding time to just go out together.
Right.
So stuff like that is a problem that typical single people don't really have, where it's just more of a like, well, when I'm not working and I don't have something else going on, we can get together. Again, when you have kids, there's a whole other realm of stuff you got to think about.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice idea. And it's really nice for those folks that, I know when my mom, my dad died when I was very young, and she did the whole parents without partners thing for a while. That's where she met, my eventual stepdad, and it was very hard for people to find that kind of stuff. And
no doubt about it.
Our hyper fast paced, everything's online, everything's, again, like instantaneous, figure out who you want, right now. Do they look good? Do they sound good? All right, move on. It's nice that we're presenting an option for people that have a little extra wrinkle in their lives that make it just that much harder to do.
Yep.
So.
There you go. Well, I hope never to have to use that.
Same
but
here.
now that
exactly.
I know what it is, all right, Stir, got it.
Yes.
All right. Well, Luke Wilwerding, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate having you on. This was a great conversation.
Thanks, Luke.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And hey, until next time, if you're single and a parent, go download Stir.
Or if you got $450,000 laying around.
Exactly. And hey, maybe, you can apply some consultative selling tips to your next date too. It's learn more about them, listen more than you talk. That's good stuff in any relationship, not just a business relationship.
There you go.
And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by ELO. Looking to meet the needs of both hospitality and retail customers and their employees, as well as their busy on-the-go customers? Introducing the new ELO M60 Pay, a mobile POS computer designed to support everyday business. It's rugged, enterprise-grade, all-in-one device, 6-inch HD touch display, Android 10 OS, Qualcomm Snapdragon 660 octa-core processor.
What?
Sounds like something out of a James Bond movie.
Right?
And all of the requisite connectivity options.
Bomb.
Now, Dean, you and I are both fans of paying where, when, and how we want. We love
on
about
demand, right?
Our phones, our watches, maybe a credit card if we feel like it.
100%.
Well, that really puts the M60 above other mobile computers for productivity, is that it offers integrated payment capabilities to speed customers along wherever they are.
Beautiful. Love
it's
it.
equipped for dip, tap, and swipe. That always sounds like a TikTok dance. Doesn't it?
Can you say that again? Dip, tap, and swipe?
Can you do the dip? Can you do the tap? Can you do the swipe?
No, I'm not on TikTok, but go ahead.
Maybe I'll shoot my very first TikTok video. It'll just be us doing our version
enough.
of whatever we think dip, tap, and swipe.
With the M60.
with the N60, yes. Elo will be like, no,
don't do
we're
that.
good. We're
Yeah,
good. That's
yeah,
fine. We're good. We don't need to go viral like that. So that means that it accepts EMV cards with chips, NFC contactless payments for cards or mobile devices, and the traditional mag stripes as well. I mean, mag stripes, whatever. It's so
Whatever.
2000s.
Yeah.
Who's using mag stripes?
You still got to get it.
I guess they're there for a reason. Perfect for tableside service, line busting, curbside pickup, anywhere your customers need to accept payments. So to learn more about this amazing new device, you're going to be hearing more about this.
Oh, yeah.
In some of our other entertainment works as well.
Yes.
Check out the link in the show notes or contact the BlueStar ELO team.